Come sit in mommy's lap.
That's a soundbite. Come sit in mommy's lap.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is so unhinged. Hello, friends.
Hey, girl.
Whoa.
Welcome to Pickles and Vodka, the mental health podcast where sometimes we disappear, but it's okay as long as we come back.
Exactly.
I'm Lauren.
And I'm Christina. And we're back together, bitches.
Yeah!
Also, I feel like when I say bitch or girl, it's gender neutral. I just want people to know.
I was actually thinking that as well when I was like, hey, girl. I was like, that's also to everyone.
Yeah, I call everyone a bitch. It's how you know I love you.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're back recording together.
Yeah.
At the very last possible minute.
We might have tried this earlier.
Well, first of all, okay, pause. So last week, Lauren texted me basically saying, like, I'm going crazy. I need to talk about it.
Yeah, pretty out of the blue. I was like, can we just record tomorrow?
Yeah. And why don't you talk a little bit about what led you to want to record out of the blue? Because we have been fucking going through it, y'all. Lauren's been really busy. And yeah, we didn't really press the issue of podcasting because, like, Pickles and Vodka will always be here for us.
Exactly.
So we haven't even really been talking on the side. As you know, we don't.
Yes, as usual.
Because we're terrible friends. No.
Right? No.
But yeah, what made you want to do it out of the blue?
I mean, I think what made me want to do it is just, like missing it and just having some time. But if you'd like a little, I know I listened to last week's episode, so I know, you got some update on what's happened to Christina. So if you want some update on what's been going on with me.
Everyone's been asking, just clamoring.
I know. My fans just can't stay quiet.
They'll be very happy with this episode.
So I have found out that I can possibly get out of this apartment that I've been talking about trying to get out of early. I would be able to get out at the end of April, and I wouldn't have to pay anything for breaking my lease early, assuming that they can find someone to rent the place in May, which it sounds to me like, if not like May 1st, they'd be able to find somebody mid-month. Like, that sounds pretty likely, so I thought that was a good deal.
I've seen your apartment. They will be able to find someone. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Like, there's been people moving in recently, and when I actually had this discussion with my landlord, she's like, as of now, there are no vacancies in this building. So I'm like, okay. So yeah people want to move in, and yeah.
So what's the biggest stressor of all that right now?
So the biggest stressor of all that, I'd say, is that as soon as this happened, it seems like me finding other places just dried up. And now I'm afraid that I'm going to be in a situation of, it's time for me to move out. And I don't have a new place. So freaking out about that a lot, trying to schedule like every place I can look at. Suddenly, like before, I was finding places I was like, oh, this is beautiful. I would love to live here if I could get out of my lease. And now that I can actually pull the plug and say yes, I'm finding places that are like, your back room is full of water because the ceiling is leaking, or or look at this tiny little kitchen with one of those like porcelain surrounds that just means, hi, I'd like to break every dish in my place.
Yeah. They really screw you over there because too early and you can't commit. And then when the time is right, there's no vacancies.
Yeah. So I am freaking out about that. And in the middle of all that, Pico has to go police meatball.
Oh my God.
I just tried to scare him, so
it sounds like you were just beating your dog.
No, I was actually beating a suitcase on the floor to make a loud noise. I was not beating my dog or my cat.
I'll just let the listeners imagine what that sounded like.
But make sure they know I wasn't beating my animals.
Oh, but say what you said before. And then...
yeah. So I haven't talked about it much here, but there has been some stress living with my roommate who moved in July. And she's also been dealing with some, like, she clearly had some stuff going on.
Mental health wise, you mean?
Yeah. I was going to say, like, obviously depression. That was a given. And yes, and she had some physical health problems. So she ended up in the hospital a couple of times recently. But then the weekend before Easter, she'd planned to go visit her family. They're like 8 hours away, I think. So she goes back and she's supposed to fly back that Monday. And instead I get a text from her that's like, so big news. I'm not coming back. My family kind of had an intervention with me and we're just like, you are clearly not well and we can't let you go back like this. So that's it.
What was your immediate reaction? Because I know you have a lot of complicated feelings about this.
Well, let's be 100% honest. We're on a mental health podcast where we talk about our own mental health. My immediate reaction was, oh shit, no one's around to watch me. Let's dive back into the eating disorder.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a short-lived one, I will say, but...
No, I'm really glad you said that because, yeah, like we've said multiple times, we try to be honest on here, but we still censor ourselves all the time. And, I mean, we'll get into recovery later. I'm so excited for that conversation.
Yes.
But yeah, you have been essentially in recovery. And so what was that like to just dive right back in, if only for a moment?
I mean, when I think about it, it doesn't really surprise me because it's the same thing as like however many years, and even to some degree today, I feel like I can be doing great, but as soon as I walk into the house where my dad lives, is the house I grew up in, and it's like as soon as I walk into that house, then I immediately feel like, oh, I have to sneak around and find everything that I can binge on and like possibly compensate for it because that's what I did when I lived in that house.
Yeah. I told my sibling, I lock the doors in my parents' bathroom. Every time I use the bathroom at their house, I lock the door. And I totally don't need to. Like, they have a million bathrooms in that place. Like, they are not going to barge into a bathroom, but it's just like an old habit. I don't lock the bathroom door like anywhere else. I don't even close the door in my own house. Well, now I do that. I have a roommate.
Yeah, that's good.
Confession hour.
I'll tell you a little story about that, though.
Oh, please do.
So my mom, having like lived alone for years and years now, I remember the first time when I came back to visit her after that, and she just walks in the bathroom, leaves the door open, and keeps talking to me, and I'm like, Mom!
What?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the kind of thing my sister and I do. But that would be so weird if it were your mom. What the fuck?
I know. I was just like,
don't like
I
that.
get that you do this now because you live alone, but there's somebody in the house now.
Yeah.
Like,
Also,
do you remember that when like the neighbor stops by for coffee?
Oh God, that sounds like a nightmare. I if I'm not expecting anyone, I do not answer the door. I don't answer the phone. My roommate's 53 and she's more social than I am. And like, she's already made friends with my neighbors and I don't even know their names. And I've lived here for 2 years.
Oh my God. I'm the same way though.
Like me or like her?
Like you.
Okay, I've assumed so.
Yeah. Like, of course I'm antisocial. Come on.
It's just a persona for the podcast. You're just like secretly a social butterfly.
Right.
Hey, girl.
Hey, girl.
Anyway, we need to stay focused. Back to your recovery / relapse.
We're gonna talk about that a lot because I also hate that word applied to myself.
Oh yeah. No, the whole time I was having that conversation with Orion, I was like, Lauren needs to be here. Like, Lauren has so much to add, and I knew we would have to do a follow-up episode where we talked about it. People haven't heard from you in a while, so let's talk more about how you've been. And you said you dove back into some eating disorder behaviors just on impulse.
I mean, I wouldn't say it like that. I think what I was trying to say is just like, it immediately just like filled my brain. Like, oh my gosh, you can just like go back into this 100%. I would say, sometimes, there were nights where it was just like, I'm too lazy to figure out what to make myself for dinner, and I don't have to.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like that was not the norm. So it was more, just like a switch flipped in my brain when I found out I was going to be alone, and it was like, we can go full hog, whatever term you want to use, but I didn't actually do that. I just kind of dabbled.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a question about that. So even before your roommate said she wasn't going to come back, you were planning on getting your own place again anyway. soon.
Yeah.
And so did you suspect that, that would be a problem, being alone and having to dabble, having the freedom to dabble?
I kind of felt like, yeah, that's actually kind of where I felt like it going, just kind of like, okay, so maybe some nights will be worse than others. I mean, I didn't then, and I don't really expect now for it to actually just like nosedive or anything like that. I think when I got that news, the reaction was more to like the surprise, because yes, I had planned to be living alone, but when you're planning it and thinking like it's going to happen in a month, and then suddenly like it's happening as of right now. That's sort of a slap in the face.
Oh my God, Pico.
Yeah, he does that, and Meatball works him up. Poor baby. Come sit in Mommy's lap.
That's a soundbite. Come sit in Mommy's lap. Oh my God, this is so unhinged.
Oh, but another thing that I think was unexpected, or like not something I thought that I'd have to deal with until, she just didn't come back here, is that this place is not super safe. That's the main reason I want to get out of here.
Well, yeah, we've heard on the podcast.
I'm like, that's no surprise to any listeners if they've heard past episodes. But so when I knew I was going to be living alone, then I knew I was going to be living alone in a place where I felt safe. I've gotten used to having a roommate here where if I don't come in when she's expecting me to, then there's someone to say like, hey, something's wrong.
Yeah.
So kind of being stuck with like, okay, just fend for myself. It was a little shocking.
Yeah. I mean, I just went through a really dark period living by myself, and I'm not going to lie, that was on my mind a lot. Like, if I die, who's going to find me? Like, yeah, I think in that way it's really good to have another body in the house or in the space. So yeah, I would be nervous too in your situation. Yeah, and I just, I hope that it isn't that way for too long, and soon I will be in a place I feel safe, and then we'll work out what living alone again is going to look like. Going back to how you've been, what else is going on? Like, where are you at with the apartment search, and like, what else have you been up to? Yeah, that's funny. I was just thinking, on top of all of this stuff we're talking about, in the past few weeks, then my grandpa just passed, and my mom is getting married in May, and we just finalized all the plans for that. So there's just a handful of stressors going on. Yeah, so last week when we recorded, you only casually touched on your mom getting married. We mostly talked about like the roommate situation and all your feelings around that because it was fresh at the time. Yeah. But like, I'm so dying to hear how the fuck you've been dealing with that. I mean, like, as far as her getting married, I think it's good. She's been dating this guy for, I want to say, like 3 years, maybe 2.5. And so I've met him a few times, and he's a little corny, but he's a good guy. And hey, there's worse things you can be than corny. Exactly. He's always nice. He treats her well. Yeah, I get along with him. So that's all fine. I'm very curious. I haven't asked her yet. I don't know if she has an answer. I don't know if it'd stress her out more. Because my mom recently, like, designed and built her own house. Like, she was going to go. Yeah. Well, she worked teaching architecture software. So, oh my God. She's designed several of our houses. Your mom is a fucking badass. Kinda. I mean, yeah. She went and got her degree in her 50s, right? Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Good for her. You go, girl. That's right. But yeah, how did you feel when she told you they were getting married? I was surprised, but not in a bad way. I was more surprised for her, I think, because she's just a very particular person. I mean, that provided a lot of like stress for me growing up. And I feel like, like once she moved out and was living on her own, then she just got to be like even more like things are just how I like them. And that's the way they'll stay. Yeah. You were drawing a comparison between yourself and her last week. Oh, yeah. That's probably how it came up. Yeah, that's how it came up. Yes. Yeah. You weren't even going to mention it. Well, because I keep forgetting. That's why I'm here to remind you. Anyway, back to your feelings. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I don't have any feelings, like I'm upset, I'm worried, anything like that. It's just kind of like interesting because,
I think I kind of assumed that for the longest time, I wasn't even sure that she would ever like seriously date anyone. She just seemed too picky and too particular, and that always made me kind of sad. So I was definitely glad, that she seemed to have somebody that she was happy with for the long term. And yeah, now it just kind of surprised me. But
yeah, I asked because I know you were listing all the reasons why you were glad, and I know that's one thing to know that it's a good thing, but then sometimes you feel things that are contrary to what you know, and it's confusing, and you have to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, back to the house thing I was talking about. I feel like, because she designed this place, she bought land where she grew up. She was really excited to move back there and, like get her house how she wants it. And I feel like he has the nicer house.
Oh, yeah, he has a house too. They both have houses.
Yeah. Like, I think his house is bigger, and I mean, the real selling point for me, of course, is they're in Michigan, and he has this beautiful beach on Lake Huron in his backyard. And I was
well, shit.
So I'm kind of like...
I know who I'd vote for.
Are you going to move there? Because I kind of hope you do.
Sounds like a pretty nice situation they got going on, regardless.
Yeah.
Dude, I completely forgot to tell you, my mom got breast reduction surgery this week.
Oh.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say too much about it because I know she'd feel weird about it. But going back to I know it's an amazing thing for her. I'm proud of her for doing it because I never thought she would do that in a million years. It's for cosmetic reasons, and health reasons.
Okay.
Anyway, I know it's a good thing, but my emotional reaction was not at all what I expected, and I've been grappling with it a lot. I won't talk about it too much today, but there's a lot of weird emotions when it comes to parents, like growing and changing in life. Like your parents are one way your whole life, and then as you become an adult and you realize, oh, they're just doing life for the first time also. Like, they're people and they're capable of change, and something like your mom getting married, and that's a huge change.
Yeah, I mean, more so, we just mentioned her getting her college degree like a week before she turned 50.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's the first thing I think of, that she just suddenly was like, yeah, I'm going to go back to school. And like, she took a couple classes, and then it's like, no, I'm going to commit to this, quit my job, go full time so I can graduate. And it's like, oh, okay.
Dude, both of our moms are badasses.
Yeah.
How do we transition this?
I don't know. I wondered if you wanted to talk any more. Like, I know you don't want to like talk about her stuff, but I was just curious because I've had feelings I feel like I can't name when other people, like friends, have said they're having like breast reduction surgery. So I just wondered if you felt anything related to that in general.
Well, yeah, I do. Boy, do I ever. Well, so I am 31 years old. I have anorexia, subtype binge purge, and it's very hard for me to accept that diagnosis in particular. But I've always had, growing up the way I did, there was a lot of emphasis on our bodies and staying modest and pure and all that stuff, but particularly breasts.
Well, that makes sense.
For anyone who is AFAB, grew up in a similar culture, you know what I'm talking about. I was just taught like to cover up my chest area before I even had boobs. And every time there was like a woman with big cleavage on TV, my mom would make a comment, and we weren't allowed to watch The Little Mermaid because her midriff was showing, and and there was a witch in it, but stuff like that, like, it's given me a very toxic relationship with like boobs in particular. And like, that's not even considering like my queer identity and how that intersects, but I don't feel comfortable with my boobs. I never have. I've always hated them. And I deal with that by like depriving my body of nutrients. And I'm just being honest.
No, that's why I wanted to hear, because I agree with that part, that like, I've never liked mine, and I like when they go away. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when my mom, got this surgery, like, I don't know. It's a complicated feeling, because it's like, not only did you raise us like this to hate our boobs but then you get to like move on and I don't know, like you get to move on and have the body you want. And meanwhile, like I'm here with my eating disorder, just like chilling.
So just putting thoughts together in my head, and this, like could be me as well. Does it feel like, sorry, I'm trying to put thoughts together, so I'm also not.
I mean, I'm jealous. I am a little jealous.
Yeah. But I'm thinking, does it feel like, say, we've both been to like an eating disorder treatment and you make friends there and you stay in touch with them to a certain degree. Does it feel like when you come home and you are continuing to do okay, even though you're maybe not super happy about everything, and then you see like one of your friends just, like spiraling and you're like, God damn it, why did they get to?
Yeah, it does feel like that. And it's weird because on one hand, I almost feel protective of my mom and her emotions, but at the same time, I'm a little jealous. I am jealous. And that's such an ugly word. And like, do I need breast reduction surgery? Absolutely not. Like, would I get it? Probably yes, if it were free.
That's exactly how I feel. Like, mine aren't huge. They're not causing back problems, but I would rather they be smaller.
And also, I have to say, it's totally okay for people to do this for whatever reason they want. Like, your body, your choice. But I don't know. I wouldn't take such a decision lightly at all. I should say that also. I don't know. I'm journaling about it a ton.
That's good.
Yeah. But speaking of recovery,
I was just thinking, let's get to the meat of the episode.
The meat of the episode. So yeah, last week I had a conversation with a friend of the pod, Orion, in which we talked about why we don't like the word recovery, how the word recovery has been weaponized against us, and our own personal experiences. And you got some thoughts.
I do. Here is my very first one. As you were talking about how you didn't like it, is I thought of it like, I understand you saying why you don't like recovery applied to you, and I don't like it applied to me. And then I was like, hang on. Sometimes I feel like it is okay. And I was like, if I did, like now, if I did a really tough aerial class and everything hurts the next day, then I don't need to push myself. I'm like, today I need to recover. That feels fine, because that feels, like I did something. I did an accomplishment. And I also would feel like it's okay to a degree if I used it in terms of if I had, like a major illness, or I had like an injury, I broke my leg, then it's like, I need time to recover. That feels like something that is not my fault. It just happened. It was bad luck.
Yeah.
But I don't like it to anything like eating disorder, addiction, depression, or anything like that, because I secretly feel like that's still all my fault and I did that to myself.
Yeah.
So I don't feel worthy of the word recover.
Oh, that's interesting. And I know in the past we've talked about the need to get as bad as possible. Like we did the whole rock bottom episode where we talked about like only then do we deserve recovery once we've quote unquote put in the work. Right. It's like you were saying, you don't feel bad relaxing after a day of a hard aerial class because you feel like you deserved it. I think in the same way, we feel like we don't deserve to recover unless we push ourselves as low as we can go. And I don't know about you, but when I've been in recovery for a while, I do stop feeling like I deserve it so much once I've forgotten how bad it got.
Yes, agree completely.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like my biggest shame about this sort of stuff is feeling like, especially when things do get really bad, then it looks to the outside, and that's what people say, that they're just like, it's a mental illness, it can't, be helped. And I believe this is true to some degree at least, but definitely, like, secretly I don't believe it's true at all for myself, of course.
Of course.
I'm like, yeah, I would say that to other people and truly believe it and mean it, but you just created this problem yourself because you're a selfish little bitch.
Well, I mean, go back and listen to yourself on Pickles and Vodka. Like, you started out being very anti-recovery, and like it's not possible for everyone, and it's definitely not possible for me. And I'm paraphrasing, but
yes, I know.
And then, of course, you kind of went 180. Is that the right number? I'm not a math person. What's it called when you turn around completely?
That's it, because a lot of people mistakenly say 360, but that's bringing you back to where you started.
Exactly. Oh, man. I've done a 360 with my eating disorder.
I've done that a few times, too.
But you've done a 180 on recovery. You went to treatment, and now, as you're talking, it kind of feels like you're moving back a little to your original stance. And that worries me a little bit. But it's also a good example of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I would argue I don't feel like I ever did like a complete 180.
Well, yeah.
I still, don't like the word recovery for me. And I still feel like what I got stronger in is I really feel like harm reduction is really important.
Totally.
So yeah, if it's the best you can do, it's the best you can do. But I feel like you should be striving for harm reduction at the least.
There's a lot of rustling in the background on your end.
I know, it's meatball.
Can you put him...
Try taking this stuff away. I don't know. Maybe if I
put him in the bathroom or something.
I was saying, maybe I'll put him in the storage room. God.
Yeah, it's just really hard to edit out when it's like...
I know.
I'm sorry. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da, 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 da. I was wondering when you would notice. But wait, before we talk more about that, because that's going to take, we could talk about that forever. As you know, I started a support group with Orion that we've been doing for a few weeks now. One of our participants made a really, really good point the other day about recovery and the semantics. You were talking about how when applied to a medical situation, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But when applied to a mental health issue, for instance, you feel like it's your fault. This person said, it's like when you get a wound, the recovery process is fairly straightforward. Scientifically what's going to happen. When I fucked up my knee during a blackout a month ago, at first it was a bloody mess, and then it develops a thin scab, and then eventually the scab comes off and it becomes a scar. You know what to expect. You know that you can't do anything to rush that process. You have to just wait it out and take care of it. And it sucks, but it's straightforward. Whereas recovery in the sense of an eating disorder, it's not like that at all. You could have days where it feels like you're doing nothing, or the outside person looking in would just see you sitting in your bed for 4 days. They don't know that you're fighting everything in you just not to maybe go run 5 miles or binge and purge. By sitting there, you are recovering, but the work is invisible. And I think that's one thing that I really struggle with. I wish recovery was more straightforward, 3 months of eating 3 meals a day and you will feel better.
Oh, me too. I wish that, they had, step 1, step 2, and you could just check them off. Except at the same time, as soon as I say that, I'm like, yeah, but AA kind of has that, and I think they're terrible.
Well, yeah. I also have a confession. I feel like I talk a lot of shit about AA on this podcast, and I have to say I've never actually been to an AA meeting. So
really, I have, and you haven't.
I haven't, and I'm still allowed to not agree with it, and I'm still allowed to speak my mind about it.
Yeah, I mean, anyone can look up the 12 steps, so you know what their philosophy is.
Yeah,
you cannot agree with it. It's fine. Total cliche here. The only time I went to an AA meeting was when I was in eating disorder treatment, and it was so that I could get out for a couple hours. It was people get to leave for a couple hours to go to AA meetings if they want. Yeah, I'll leave.
No, you really do use every, I would do that too, just to get out of treatment. Anyway.
Yeah, so I'm looking at my notes. I think the other big thing that I took a lot of notes on was the idea of relapse, because you guys talked about that for quite a bit. Is it normal? Yeah, should it be normalized? And I think what really struck me is when Orion kind of called you out and was saying that, feeling like you need to put on a good face and, like you can't relapse, that's what's doing the most damage. And I completely agreed with that. I feel like what I see in you, what I see in my roommate who just, had to admit that things got so bad and she needed help is that because people feel that way, that they have to like put on this good face, they're probably sitting there, denying it to themselves too, saying like, oh, it's not really that bad. This isn't really a relapse. Then what you're really doing is, instead of getting help early in a relapse when it would be easy to turn around, then you are letting it basically hit rock bottom before you admit like, yeah, I guess this is a relapse and now I need a lot of help. So I feel like it's doing a disservice really by saying like, you got to pretend like it's not, like everything's fine.
Yeah, I think we should amend our podcast official stance on rock bottom, which was rock bottom is dead. I think we should amend it to also say rock bottom does not exist until you create it.
Ooh, I like that. It's what I have the most experience dealing with, I guess, is the eating disorder. So I go back to that and I think of like, how many millions of times have you heard people say that it's like the earlier you catch it, the easier it is to, like turn it around and everything like that. And every single time I hear that, then I think like, yeah, and I successfully hid it for 20 years. So I really screwed myself with that one.
Yeah. Well, also part of it is the system does work in favor of people who are further along in their illness when they seek help, which they should. But also it does discourage people who maybe are exhibiting fewer symptoms, or if their symptoms aren't externally visible, they feel like, at least for me, I feel like I won't be taken as seriously. I won't be offered the same amount of care. And then I decide not to even try because I can't bear to just be rejected, because that would invalidate me even further. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting point too, that it's like, so all of our research and everything says it's better to catch these things early. You have a better prognosis in that case. And yet our lovely healthcare system likes to say, you're not sick enough. Come back when you are.
Well, yeah, talk about, alcohol, for instance, if you maybe like had 3 drinks a week or whatever, but they were all on the same night, and you're like, I don't like what this is doing to me. I feel like I can't stop drinking 3 drinks a night on this day. Like I can't stop. And you go to the doctor, they're like, oh, this is a terrible example.
No, it's a good one, because I would even take it further to say, like, let's say you have 1 drink a night, but you have to. You feel like your life is ruled by that drink. Yeah. So that, signifies a problem in your mind, as it probably should. But yeah, someone would say, you go to a doctor and they're just like, oh, that's healthy. That's fine.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. It's like so many people in my life have issues with alcohol, and because they never hid their drinking or blacked out or drank at work or whatever, they don't consider themselves to have a problem. Like, it's a cultural issue, and not just in our country either. And
no,
it's an easy example because everyone's familiar with it. It's like
because we've normalized it to some degree so much that it's easy. Like, if you're on the outside, I feel like you kind of want people to be okay and you want them to be, fine. So yeah, I feel like even someone on the outside would sort of like easily justify it. Like, oh, but you're coming to me with this concern, but you just have a couple drinks a night. That's like most people. You're fine.
But also, it's none of my business how much you drink. And like, it's none of my business, like, how much drinking is problematic for you. Like, you just need to fucking trust people if they tell you they have a problem. Like, everyone is different. All I know is my experience. That's all I can speak on ultimately.
Because, that's where I was getting to. Like, I feel like it's more like what you know of yourself. If you know, like, I am uncomfortable with how much I need this 1 drink a night versus I have 3 drinks every night, but if I don't have to for a month, that's fine. Don't depend on it. Then it's like internally. It's not, like outside, like, how much do we see this person drinking?
God, this is like reverse denial. It's like the opposite of when someone's drinking too much, but they won't accept that they do. Again, we're just using alcohol as an example. Yeah,
like I'd say it happens with like all mental health, especially because mental health to some degree is invisible.
Yeah. And we feel this need to... Well, yeah. We've also talked a lot about how we feel the need to externalize our mental health struggles to feel valid or to get attention. Like, we had a whole episode about how attention isn't a dirty word and how everyone needs attention. And we feel like, yeah, because our illnesses are invisible, we're not going to get attention for them. And so we do things like self-harm or, lose or gain weight, like changing the way we look. And again, this is just our experiences.
Look at my pain inside is now on the outside.
Yeah, it's a tale as old as time. I feel like people can relate. And so recovery in the same way, I'm curious to hear your opinion on this. Like, one of the reasons I'm afraid of recovery that I didn't talk about this last time is I'm afraid of my appearance changing. And I'm not just talking about gaining weight, although that's like the obvious unspoken thing.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like I've been sick for so long in so many ways. I feel like I'm used to the way I look when I'm sick. And like in recovery, I feel like people expect me to change and I don't want to change.
Yes. I don't know what else to say about that in the moment, but wow.
Yeah, it's weird because I know I don't look the best, but also I'm used to it. And it feels like relinquishing control, the C word.
The C word.
Yeah, I mean, recovery is just so uncertain and it's different for everyone. And that's ultimately what we concluded last week is that like, it's scary because you really have to define it for yourself.
I think it's hard maybe for people that haven't gone through it to understand the difference between the physical signs that you have recovered versus all of the internal, which takes way, way longer. Yeah. It's like you can physically see like, wow, you look better now that you're not doing drugs, or you've gained weight and you look healthier.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you are anywhere near recovered or through it.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, I mean, I talked a tiny bit about my journey applying for disability. And there's a part of me that is terrified that I'll get denied if I gain weight, even though I know that's not the case. And like, that's really fucked up, but it's not an unwarranted concern either.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I have gained weight recently and it's great. And like a doctor was, I went to the doctor and I saw my weight. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. And I was like visibly like disappointed. And the doctor was like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Oh, I gained weight." And they were like, "Amazing." Like, good. And I wanted to like punch them.
Yes.
But that's part of recovery, I guess.
Yep.
What else do you have in your notes?
So I don't know what I want to say about some of these things, but I just have a few like sound bites. I loved that quote that you talked about that said, if you've had trauma, you try to avoid trauma. Yeah,
trauma predisposes you to not want to have more trauma or something like that.
Yeah.
It was a quote from Tori Williams Douglas, who has a podcast called White Homework. It's amazing.
Okay.
But yeah, that quote has stuck with me for days.
Yeah. And especially the conversation you had after it about realizing like you might not have even known when you started having trauma.
Yeah. I mean, how does that relate to your experience?
Well, it made me think like, first of all, that's probably correct. I mean, obviously, when I was born, I was not supposed to be born, and my parents had a, significantly, like, I don't know, brain damage, whatever word you want to use. But, my sister could not do anything for herself. They had to take care of her like she was a baby all of her life and more. Yeah. And I'm the baby at that point, and it's like, they had to put more into caring for her all the time. And so, yeah, I probably didn't get the attention I should have as a kid. And that just made me think like, okay, so, I mean, I don't think I was severely neglected or abused or anything by them, but it was, probably some amount of trauma. And so basically before I could like put thoughts together, I'm already growing up trying to avoid it.
Yeah. Well, and you told the story once on an episode where when your mom was a baby, her mom would like hold her facing away from her, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, and that's because her theory was she thought that the babies would want to see like the people in the room. So she always set them on her knee facing outward. And it's like, well, yeah, but now we know like babies need to be held.
Mm-hmm. They need to look into their mother's eyes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great example. Not only does it affect you earlier than you think, but like she passed that on to you in so many ways. It's a generational thing in some cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of scares me and confirms that I don't want to have kids.
I already knew that. I don't want kids. I mean,
well, yeah.
At this point.
Yeah. What else you got?
It actually like shed a lot of light, I feel like, on just our time together in general when you said that you still kind of inherently believe that humans are wicked. I found it interesting because I feel like I believe kind of the opposite.
You're an optimist this whole time?
Not exactly, but it's sort of... I feel like everybody's base capacity is to be a decent person. And I think that's where it's almost maybe like I wonder if I'm more delusional.
Well, no, I don't think it's delusional to believe that people generally want to be good people. I would say believing that everyone is wicked is more delusional and the result of being raised to believe that humans are wicked.
Yeah, that sent me down like a whole like other rabbit hole thinking about it. And I'm like, it's really interesting because I knew that obviously this came from your upbringing and is like residual of that. My upbringing would have taught me fairly similar. I mean, I grew up Catholic and they don't say Catholic guilt for no reason.
Well, yeah, that's why this is such a shock to me and I want to hear more about it.
It's always interesting to me when like religious conversations like that come up because I have realized that, you know, I was taught that. And if I chose to, you know, believe all of that, but for some reason, just in my little brain, like independent of everything, I decided to like pick out the things that don't support that. I mean, I think we've brought up religion before where I've said that like one of my friends when I was 18 had to inform me what Catholic guilt was, even though I grew up Catholic. My response was just like, what do I have to feel guilty about? I was just like confused.
Wow. Must be nice.
Yeah, I was like, part of it could be, you know, me just like not really paying attention in church because I just thought it was boring and my mind would just go to, I don't know, My Little Ponies or something like that. So maybe I missed those lessons. But I don't say I believe one way or another, but I hold that some of the like basics of religion are possible. That's kind of how I still believe. And I think it is because like early on, that's all I took from it is I was just like, if there's a God, basically he doesn't want you to be an asshole.
Yeah.
That's it. That's really it.
Yeah.
And that's just how I've always seen it. You know, I didn't focus on like, these people are bad and this is a sin. It was just like, no, just don't be an asshole.
Well, so how does that intersect with your definition of recovery?
Ooh.
Do you want me to be more specific? I'm trying to...
Yes.
Like we talked a lot last week about programs like AA that remind us of religion, and they themselves might even be considered religions in their own right. And that kind of black and white thinking doesn't really work for me personally and a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I recognize that spirituality, like everyone has a spirit, you know, whatever that means. Like, and I don't want to say you can't have recovery without having some sort of spiritual practice, but you kind of can't. And I am like a hardcore atheist. Like for me to say that means something. And like for me, that has looked like going on a walk without headphones and like sitting on a bench and just like meditating, I guess. And when I meditate, I'm just like sitting in the quiet and like letting my thoughts just run their course. And that's what it looks like for me. That is spiritual to me. But I have a very different, as we're finding out, we have kind of differing views on this. And so I'm wondering, in your recovery, like past, present, or future, can you see yourself incorporating some sort of spiritual practice? And like, how does your view of spirituality affect your recovery, if it even does?
So I think my view on like recovery and spirituality would actually be more in line with yours, because even though I have like conflicting reviews.
I got conflicting reviews on religion for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
Even though I have
by the way, everyone, rate and review. Rate and review.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of reviews.
Yeah, we haven't gotten any in a while.
Well, we haven't talked in a while.
Well, that's fair. I probably shouldn't have revealed that we haven't gotten reviews in a while. We may or we may not, but give us more.
Yeah.
Anyway, 5 stars.
Yeah. 5-star reviews only.
Back to religion.
Yeah. So even though I do have like conflicting views on that for myself, I do know that because that comes up sometimes in programs and things like that, even if they're not like geared that way, that it's kind of like, some like spirituality and stuff like has given people a sense of purpose. And I have 100% never felt like any sort of like recovery is related to spirituality for me as far as like the religion side or any, like beliefs. Mm-hmm. But I do agree with you. Like as soon as you described that, I was like, yeah, I've been in the same spot where, there's been places where I have walked and it's kind of like if I go out walking so that I can listen to podcasts or, even so I can like obsess about counting steps or something like that, then that is one thing versus I have gone on walks where I'm just like, I'm not going to worry about my pace. I'm not going to worry about how far I go. I am just going to look and take in everything around me.
Yeah, that's spiritual as fuck.
And yeah, so that's why I'm like, the kind of spirituality that I bring to recovery, I'd say, is the same as yours.
Well, and I also want to elaborate that I think spirituality for me is anything that grounds me on this planet or in my community, something that reminds me that there are things bigger than me. I think that is how I would define it. But that also brings up community in recovery. And I know you have thoughts on that. Like Orion and I talked a lot about like online community versus in-person community. What I
do want to say one more thing really quick about the spirituality is I think that also, like, even if I do believe there is some like higher power, higher being or whatever, it always kind of like gives me the ick when people like relate that to their recovery, because to me that feels the same as doing it for somebody else.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't like that idea in general. I don't, not saying like I've never, adopted this theory, but I don't feel like it's going to be setting you up for success saying, well, I'm doing it for my parents, I'm doing it for my partner.
At the same time, though, like you have a problem, the opposite problem, which is like accepting help from people. So like you can go either way. You don't want to fully lean on other people or do it for other people, but you also can't do it on your own. Yeah.
And I do feel like the difference to me, if somebody is in any sort of recovery, like even if they are just taking little baby steps, I feel like it's a big difference once you've decided to do it for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about this before we started recording, but like some people, you do all you can for them and it's not enough. Like if they are not in the position, like if they're not receptive to help, even if you feel like you're helping them out a little bit, like it's not going to stick if they don't want it. They might do it to appease you or whatever, but it's all very subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah. But community, what are your thoughts on community and recovery? Because like you have been on the internet forever, and I know you feel very strongly about online communities.
I think that maybe we need to do a whole episode on this at some point. But briefly, where did I just hear that? Oh, it was just like a YouTube thing that I watched recently where someone was kind of talking about that stuff. And they were also, sort of like an OG person in it like me. And they were talking about like people getting banned on Instagram and TikTok and all, like the algorithms now to like search out any like word that they're like, now we're going to suspend your account and things like that, and how like policing it is. And they're just like, when I was on the communities online, then it was like, yeah, maybe it wasn't always healthy, but it is worth noting that at that point, they were usually like private forums that you had to apply to, and you had to kind of like go through a process. And they're like, in that process, a lot of people that, maybe they're trying to protect from all of this like Instagram stuff that were just saying like, hey, I just want to like search this stuff out and, see what I can do with it, and maybe I'll create a problem for myself. Like, they kind of got weeded out because they weren't interested in going through that process, or, you'd see it and be like, hey, turn back while you can. Don't use this as a way to, like, create a problem for yourself. Yeah.
I actually watched this crazy documentary about this the other day. We're going to do a whole episode.
Yep.
Maybe Vicky can come and guest on that one.
Oh, yeah, because she's the only person I know longer than me. She was on LiveJournal before I was.
Vicky, consider this your invitation.
Yep, come back.
Come back.
And talk to us.
This isn't how we contact most of our guests, I promise.
Right. You're about to say something about a documentary? Or were you going to save it?
I'm going to save it. I guess, unless you have any further notes, I really want to hear, like, how you would define recovery now, and, like, whether you consider yourself in recovery, and, like, what your recovery goals are, if you will. I fucking hate myself.
I feel like, what's the quote from The Princess Bride? It's like, you keep saying that word. I do not think you know what it means.
I don't think that word means what you think it means.
That's it.
Oh my God.
That's perfect.
Dude, that's so perfect. I'm going to make a meme and post it on the podcast Instagram. Oh my God.
Love it.
It's so perfect. Well, what do you think it means?
I'm going to go back to what I said a couple conversations ago, that it's like doing it for yourself. I think I want to start saying, like, not that I'm in recovery, because obviously I do not like that word for myself, but just say, like, I am trying to do better for myself.
Yeah.
And I can get behind saying, like, that's my goal.
What are some ways you're doing better for yourself lately?
The main way, I'd say, continues to be taking the aerial classes. I mean, I often look at, like, the videos I take of myself there, or even I just go home afterwards and I just feel like, ugh, gross. I can't believe how I look in leggings and a tight tank top, and I'm disgusted. But I have never once felt that at class. Like, I just enjoy what I'm doing and sometimes feel impressed with myself that I'm able to do something crazy.
Seriously, I couldn't do that.
That's really the biggest one. I am trying, and I think I'm going to be successful this time around, to get into a new band.
Ooh.
Yeah, we've had a couple practices, and that I know, as soon as I think about, like, performing with a band again, oh, I love that. And that's also putting yourself out there, and, like, on the heels of thinking how much I loved it. It's scary.
Of course, it's unknown. Like, you're a creature of habit, like you've said, and you've lived with your eating disorder for decades. Like, of course, you're not going to want to do other things, but that's the only way, I think, to, as you said, get better every day, is just open yourself up little by little to new experiences, to, like, replace, like, I don't know if this is healthy or not. I like to be so busy that I don't have time to think about my eating disorder, for an example.
Yeah. I think I tried that way, and I'm not sure that that's really, like, now I wouldn't say that I'm to that extreme. I think I've maybe found a little better of the balance, which is to find things that make it worth it. Because I think of, like, how many mornings have there been where, especially because I'm not hungry in the morning, I don't want anything in the morning. It's real.
It's fine.
The thing that feels best on my stomach is black coffee. But I'm thinking, like, how many mornings have I just, like, grumbled through it and been like, oh, well, you want to be strong enough to do your aerial classes. You want your brain to work when you go to work and do band practice. Mm-hmm. Eat the fucking breakfast.
Yep.
But it's like, that's what's getting me to do it. So,
and if that's what gets you to do it, like, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of you.
Oh.
And I'm not alone when I say that. I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Recovery is great.
Even though we hate the word.
But yeah, it feels so good to record together again. And I'm not going to promise that we'll do the same next week, but my hope is that we get back there eventually.
Yeah. And I do feel much more comfortable recording now that there is not a roommate here. Because we talked about that a little last time. That's like, even though, like, she's totally respectful and she'd stay in her room, and I know she's not trying to, like, listen in or all the time, it still always felt to me like I was being watched.
Yeah.
So that always made it hard. And now feel
I
more
get
like,
that.
yeah, let's do it.
If anything, I'm like too loud, even if there are people in the house. I just don't care. And then they'll mention something. They'll be like, oh, yeah, I heard you talking about that. And I'm just mortified.
Oh.
Anyway, we'll see y'all when we see y'all.
Yep.
Lauren, do you know what I'm going to ask you?
I think so.
Do you want to plug our social media?
I've been waiting for this moment.
Me too, honestly.
Well, you can find Pickles and Vodka on Instagram at Pickles and Vodka Podcast. You can email us with any thoughts or questions, picklesandvodkapodcast@gmail.com. We have a Facebook, which is Pickles and Vodka, a mental health podcast. And we are on YouTube at Pickles and Vodka Podcast. Also, we have our individual Instagrams at XTinaJumper, at Pico Suave, and maybe at Lauren AFH, because I've started to be on there a little more often.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we also have a weekly support group, Pickles Anonymous, that you can join Saturdays, Eastern Standard Time. Wait, no. You can join Saturdays, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time by going to...
People in crisis, keeping life endurable?
Correct, Lauren.
I feel like I've said the E like different every time. I'm like, enjoyable?
Saturdays, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard. Go to join.freeconferencecall.com/picklesanonymous. That's it.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.